This is the Digital Marketing Experts Podcast episode. No, why am I trying to sound like a radio announcer? Experts in the Wire, episode 32. Dan Shore? Hey everyone, welcome to episode 32 of Experts on the Wire. As you could probably tell in that intro with the tone of me saying my own name, this episode features a reverse interview with me. That's right, I met up with Tom Critchlow in New York City 2 days ago. I was down there for the Affiliate Summit East. I was giving a presentation on keyword research, and Tom and I decided to meet up in the lobby of the Marriott in Times Square. And he did a little... Oh, my phone is ringing. See, we don't edit things here, folks. It's my wife calling. So I'm going to answer this, and we're going to jump into my interview, my reverse interview with Tom Critchlow. Hello?
We'll put out there today about why I decided to launch the brand.
We should talk a few minutes about that.
We can talk a little bit about that, yeah. We can get into that when we talk about branding. I want to talk to you about the name Evolving SEO anyway, so we can talk about it then.
Cool. Well, we're already rolling, so
Great.
I'm just going to kind of fade it in.
We'll just fade this in at the right moment. Welcome to the Evolving SEO podcast.
Experts on the Wire.
Experts on the Wire, I stand corrected. I'm your host for today, Tom Critchlow.
Yes.
We're planning a little bit of switcheroo this week, where I'm going to interview Dan. I already did an episode a couple weeks back, and so I thought there's only so much talking about myself I can do, but I love Dan, I love the show, and I thought what better way than to actually interview Dan, because as a podcast host, you don't really get a chance to talk about yourself. So let's start way back. We first met in New York as you were kind of getting into the SEO industry, I think.
And I should say, we're coming full circle, meeting here at Affiliate Summit East.
Right.
Because we met when I was down here at Affiliate Summit East.
That's
2011.
2011.
Yeah. So 5 years ago.
Okay, but before you did that, you were a piano teacher.
Yes.
Tell me about that. Tell me a little bit about your background there before we launch into the whole digital SEO thing.
My background is my mother realized I love music when I was 3 years old, and we were at a parade, and all the fire engines went by, and I bawled my eyes out, and she ducked into a random store, and it was a music store. And there was like a little toy piano there, and I was so happy. I immediately stopped crying and just started banging on the keys.
Just started playing some free jazz.
Yeah.
And that was it.
Very free jazz at that time. And it really just went from there. Luckily, I have parents that are very nurturing. They encouraged me to pursue what I love. My dad's a sculptor, so how could they say no to something like an art, like music? So, fast forward all the way up until I went to college. I went to UNH for music. Studied classical piano, although I don't have a lot to show for it now. My chops are kind of rusty. But that's pretty much was my life all the way up through grade school.
And so had digital entered your life in any real way? Had you done anything online? Or
Yes.
was digital kind of a whole new thing for you?
Yeah, I had some experience online. So I was always sort of entrepreneurial. Like, I had a bucket band group with friends from high school. We put together a group where we drummed on buckets. We went around to different grade schools, libraries, summer camps. So it was like a little business. And a friend of mine who now lives and works here in the city at Bloomberg News from high school, he was very savvy with graphic design and the web. So he actually first taught me how to use Dreamweaver, and we set up our bucketband.com, which I'm sure doesn't exist anymore. You might be able to find on archive.org. And that's really how I started to learn, was my friend started teaching me, and then as I went through different bands and through college and my early 20s, I was always in different music groups. I needed to do websites for my piano lessons, for my dad's businesses. So it really just kind of evolved from there.
Interesting. Okay, and so let's fast forward to 2010, 2011. You've been doing the piano tutoring for a while, and something changes that makes you decide, you know what, I'm going to go into the SEO industry.
What changed, and I'm going to be completely honest, was finances.
Okay.
To a large, not entirely, but to some degree, right? Performing live music, teaching music lessons is not a lucrative career. It's great for somebody in their 20s. Like, I literally paid $300 a month to live in a house in New Hampshire through most of my 20s.
Don't say that too loudly. We're here in New York recording this live at Affiliate Summit, and I feel like there's a lot of people
Yeah, this was like
literally kill you for saying that you live in a $300 house.
This was a 1,000 square foot house, and I lived there with my 2 musician friends. I played in bands with them. We went to UNH together, University of New Hampshire. And I mean, I had next to no expenses, so I could teach piano lessons for $35 an hour and I could drive 2 hours one way to play an $80 gig. And, and that would take up my entire Saturday. So, and then also what happened is I got married. So my wife is from the Massachusetts area. It was a really tough decision for us because we did try to live up in the New Hampshire, Maine area when we first got married. I mean, things were bad financially. We had our heat shut off, all these things happened because we were trying to kind of make it work. Her life was in central Massachusetts.
Right.
Mine was largely up in New Hampshire. And after 6 months, we packed it up and we left. We went back to the Worcester area of Massachusetts where her family's from, where she had a job and at least had health insurance. And from there is really where the seed was planted for me to start really what I felt was me growing up into adulthood and doing more of a, quote, professional, adult sort of job.
Right.
And it started with me literally having no money and having to just go work for my dad and do whatever I needed to do. Sweep the floors, clean clay.
He's a sculptor at this point.
He's a sculptor, yeah. So his studio's out near Boston. So I was driving, 3 hours a day to go work for him for, the hourly rate he could pay me. And even sometimes I had to borrow money from them too. So he was actually paying me in hours and just so I could pay him back money that they had loaned me. So I was really it was basically like I was starting completely from scratch. But one thing I did, and I encourage everyone to do, is really utilize the time that you have and the resources that you have. Because there was a public library I used to stop at on the way home. I'd leave his office, stop at the public library, and that's where I first listened to 7 Habits, 80-20 Principle, these books about entrepreneurship and business, and that's really where I caught the emotional bug that had nothing to do with finances.
Right.
That taught me that told me that I wanted to get into something more in that realm, like business, marketing, websites. And so I was being a little hyperbolic to say it was only finances. That is a part of it. I mean, certainly when you get married, you buy a house, you've got a lot more bills than $300 a month. You have to find a way to support yourself. And that was a large part of it. But there was and is always kind of an entrepreneurial bug inside of me as well.
So let's paint the picture. You're working for your dad, you're sweeping the floors, cleaning up clay, basically paying off debt to your dad. You're driving back and forth many hours a day. You're stopping in the library and listening to these audiobooks or picking up real books, kind of getting infused. And at that point, the idea of a startup, of being an entrepreneur, was a little less hyped than it is now. I feel like now it's a very glamorous profession. Even back in 2011, 2010, it was well respected, it was exciting, but it was still very new. There weren't the big success stories as much that we had now. So, do you remember the first seed about SEO? Do you remember the first time you encountered SEO? Do you remember the thing that twigged you onto that? And you said, you know what?
You're giving me chills right now, too. Yeah. But no, absolutely. I was doing a website for my friend who's a piano tuner. And the Boston area is very competitive for any kind of local work like that. And he would always ask me how he could do better in ranking in Google. And so that's where it started. I started to do the research. I bought a book called Search Engine Optimization Explained or something in Barnes & Noble. I'm sure most of it's not even relevant anymore.
Including Barnes & Noble.
Yeah, exactly. And I discovered Moz, I discovered an SEO book. This was probably around 2008, 2009.
Okay, so this is a ways before.
Yeah, before we met.
2010.
Yeah, I had been doing it kind of hiding by myself for a while, and when we met is when I finally, that was me coming out into the public world of SEO, because I tend to be a bit timid with confidence, so it took me, 2, 3, 4 years of kind of doing it, and then okay, now I'm ready to go meet some people and branch out and really try to do this.
So when you say doing it, is this kind of favors for friends with websites, or are you getting paid for it? Are you working for an agency? What's the story?
It's a mix. So it was my piano tuner, my friend the piano tuner. it was my dad's 2 websites. So for a while, he ranked for sculpture reproductions and like all this stuff because he has an e-commerce site that I built for him.
Wow.
Like I had a friend, and I kind of, between my friend and myself, I taught myself some PHP and SQL and like, you know, web development, kind of hacky web development, but still the site functioned.
Right.
And so I did his site, and then my piano lessons. That's how I actually got probably a third of my students. So like I said, in 2007-ish, my wife and I had moved to a brand new area for me. I left all 40 of my piano students behind in New Hampshire.
Wow.
So I started from scratch, and really the first couple students I got was Craigslist, but I got like super like into like using HTML in Craigslist and making it look really nice. But then I built myself a music lesson website, and I just, you know, did tons of local SEO to it, and between that, the piano tuner, my dad's sites, that's really where I got my start. And then like I worked for my dentist for a little while. I worked for like a nursery, so like it was really just doing it. And then when I really decided I wanted to go out and like proactively do it, and this is something I advise everyone to do, I don't see a lot of people doing this. I went into the piano teaching forums where I had been active as a piano teacher, and I already had done some networking. And I just posted a message. I said, hey, if any piano studio out there wants some free SEO, I'm just trying to get some testimonials, some case studies, just some experience, let me know. And it was this brand new music studio in Michigan, and they accepted the offer, and I did some free SEO for them. And they literally like had to like move to like a new location because their business was just growing so much. Not
Amazing.
all because of the SEO, but like at least I would hope in part because of some of the work that I was able to give to them. So.
Right. Yeah, and I think it's interesting listening to this story. It's easy to paint the narrative of, oh, well, you're starting out with really small businesses, local businesses, you know, like trying to work your way up. In my mind, when I hear that story, I actually hear that you're leapfrogging everyone trying to get into the industry that isn't doing it.
Right.
There are so many people, certainly back in 2010, 2011 or earlier, SEO is becoming a thing. People want to work in SEO. People try and make careers in SEO. Having never actually built a website, having never actually optimized the business from start to scratch, haven't actually driven results for somebody.
Yeah.
What I hear is that you're leapfrogging all of that. You're getting incredible actual real-world experience doing SEO, and also importantly, managing clients, finding clients, getting business. These are all the foundations that set you up to then launch. So then, okay, so then fast forward.
So let me stop right there. I'm going to tell you one thing. That what you just said, I want to highlight that. Yeah, I built websites from scratch. Not with WordPress, not with like some CMS, but like started with a blank text file.
The old-fashioned way.
Yeah, and like just like started, whatever that thing is, HTML, greater than, HTML, less than, and then just
Right.
like that's like literally blank slate. Like my dad's functioning e-commerce site was built on text files,
Right.
and images, of course.
Let me, a quick digression. I have a vision of you sat at your laptop coding, and it involves you playing the keyboard in the same way you play jazz piano. Do you find any parallels? Do you find yourself rhythmically typing? Is there any? Do you draw any kind of parallel from the piano keyboard to the laptop keyboard?
You're a really good interviewer. I tell you, I am a terrible typer. Terrible. I literally use 3 fingers to type.
Wow.
I always have, but I'm fast.
Okay.
And maybe it is the piano. Practice the piano skills.
But you never learned touch typing like that?
No, I mean, I'm sure they tried to teach me in school. I was a terrible student. That guy's loud walking by. I was a terrible, I'm sure they tried to teach me the, 8-finger typing or whatever.
Okay, so it's less free jazz on the laptop, and it's more kind of
It's more chaotic.
chopsticks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So back to the open less than HTML greater than.
Yeah. I mean, when you have the experience of figuring out how to hand code in canonical tags on an e-commerce site,
Right.
And it's not like I did this like 1,000 times. It was 2 sites I did this on: my dad's site and the nursery site that I made them an e-commerce site as well. But when you have that experience at least once, it teaches your brain to think in a certain way. And not only do you start thinking like a programmer or a developer, you can communicate with them as well. And there's so many times I've been in that situation where I'm delivering an audit to a client, and like the developer comes in and I can tell like he doesn't like me, or like I'm giving him more work to do essentially. Like I'm making his job harder really. And he tries to tell me like he can't do it because of this or because of that, and I'm like, no, you can easily do that in about 5 minutes.
Yep.
And so it just gives you that kind of frame of reference to be able to communicate.
And I think that point right there speaks to the heart of what it means to be a successful consultant or agency, rather than just somebody who can know the basics. It's not about the recommendations, it's about the recommendations that get implemented. And that barrier is, again, something a lot of people still don't understand to this day. And having had that real experience, having to hand code a canonical tag, that teaches you what's involved. It teaches you how to get it done.
Yeah, it's getting things implemented. More and more, I'm realizing 90% of my job as a consultant is that. Is to figure out the chain of command, or to figure out who's got the keys to the FTP access, or like who's the one that is the boss that's going to tell the, you know what I mean?
Totally.
That's a huge aspect of it, and for quite a while I was doing audits and SEO work flipped around. Like 90% I was just like head down, putting together my audit doc, but then realizing that it's about the people that are implementing it.
Right.
Yeah.
And again, this is the experience that I think you got very early on, that a lot of people, even people working at big agencies now, still don't understand that the value is in the output, not in the document. That's, well, caveat, that's not entirely true when you work with massive enterprise companies. Sometimes they actually value the document in its own right, but that's kind of an edge case. For the most part, everyone cares about actual implemented solutions. Okay, so I'm desperate to fast forward to 2010, 2011. This coming out, as you're talking, into the SEO community, I guess, or in kind of a more public profile. Not talking about SEO on piano forums, but talking about SEO on Mars.
Yes.
Talk me through that.
Yeah, so, and again, I was hyperbolizing a little, saying it was only financial. There was an excitement for me, and there still is, because I saw the people like yourself, and like Will Reynolds, and like all these people that I was excited to meet. Like, a large part of it was me just wanting to meet people like you, and meet Will, and meet Rand, and like all these people, because I saw that you and other people were doing things that you were excited about and passionate about. And the thing that resonated me, and still does with the SEO industry, is it's still sort of this hacky, like kind of piecing things together, a little bit guerrilla style. Like it's not refined as an industry, and I like that in a sense. I mean, there's negatives to that. But in 2010...
It's just to linger on that for a moment, because we're sat in the conference hall of Affiliate Summit, which is this huge beast. I mean, it seems like there's probably a few thousand people here, maybe I'm not quite sure the exact numbers, but it's interesting that we can still talk about this industry as being hacky, cobbled together, the free jazz of the industry, which I think is really interesting. And I'm not quite sure why we've resisted codifying or resisted the calcification of a lot of other industries quite so strongly. And maybe it's just that there are all of the personalities, all of the people that hold positions of power in the industry came to it from some variation of the background you described.
Yes.
Fell into it, had to get into it, was excited about getting into it. You look at Rand's background, exactly the same story. With financial troubles, trying to figure stuff out, put a few things on the internet, and then next thing you know, he's Rand Fishkin.
Yeah. And I'm not Rand, but let's hang on that point for a second, and I'm going to go into something I haven't talked about. I've been thinking about what I'm going to say here since about mid 2015.
Okay.
I've talked to a few people about it, and I think I know why SEO is in the place that it is. When you look at all these other marketing or advertising channels, it's very clear by the name or what it is, like where you do it, who does it, what the goal is, and what's supposed to happen, right? Take PPC.
Right.
It's pretty black and white for the most part. It's that you're paying money to run an ad on Google. And you pay and it shows up, and you optimize for clicks or whatnot. Social media marketing, that insinuates a place where that happens. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. And it also insinuates who does that. It's somebody that's experienced in those platforms. Right. They're probably good, my phone is buzzing. They're probably good with communication with people, hopefully. Hopefully they're not spamming Twitter. Yeah. And but the identity crisis in SEO, I think largely has to do with the fact that all these barriers are gone, right? The term SEO is terrible. It's a terrible term. The noun search engine does not at all say what happens, who does it, what the goal is, and like why you're doing it, and where it, you know what I mean? It's completely, so something I've been wanting to kind of put out there is that in my mind, I replace search engine with search ecosystem. And let me explain. So I try to think of like what reality is. Not like what do we think is SEO, but like, what's the reality, right? And you tweeted something a few months ago that I'll put in the show notes that resonated with me. It was a really good article. The reality of the world, like if you're trying to map it out, is that we have the real world, right? People, places, the hotel we're in. You've got the internet, which is like a digital footprint. It's like a digital carbon copy of the real world. And then you have search engines. So I picture these three things literally mapped out. That's the reality of the world we live in. The real world, the digital world, and a search engine. That's the search engine ecosystem. So when you think about doing search ecosystem optimization, it's not just, I want to get something to rank better in Google. Every one of those three elements passes information to and from it. So people in the real world, they put stuff on the digital footprint, the World Wide Web or Instagram or Facebook. The search engine goes and crawls the digital footprint. So that makes you think about, when I'm in the real world, putting stuff on the internet, I should make it accessible to search engines as well. Like, one thing that really bothers me is this thing like, should I optimize for search engines or for people? It's like, no, like both, obviously, right? It's so obvious. And I think when you try to have an accurate mental map of what reality actually, it helps you do your job a lot better. And like, getting a little sound there. And another way to think of this is the search engines collect data. And like, we in the real world can then use that data that the search engines have to do search engine optimization, but it's search ecosystem optimization. So we're really having that whole framework in mind of how things function. And to me, it's this living organism, right? It's like a chemical equation, like things pass to and from it. It's not this static thing. And that puts SEO on a way bigger level. I mean, just it puts SEO out there in the level of like humanity, really.
Right.
Because like search engines, like, Google Trends started as like cataloging flu trends, right? That's like touches upon life. That's way beyond just like, I want to get you to rank better in Google. That has to do with like life. And so Google has all this data, and some of it's negative as well, like when people search for suicide and like when they search for drug use or when they're depressed, like, but it's this like database of like humanity's like needs and wants. And to me, that's really interesting, and I think that's one reason why I do like SEO as well, is because that goes way beyond just like, I'm running an ad or I'm doing like, what hashtag should I use in Instagram. All that stuff's great too. But I think that if people have the right mental model of what SEO is, then we start talking about it a completely different way. And to me, SEO is not sat side by side with marketing channels. It's just not. To me, SEO is up there with business.
Right.
It's up there with like life.
Fascinating. I think you need to write that article about search ecosystem optimization. What you're approaching, as I heard it, is basically a kind of philosophical understanding of how Google is attempting to map the world. You can almost imagine it, I'm imagining it as this kind of two-sided debate. You have on the one hand humans who have a kind of sketchy, vague grasp of what the digital landscape looks like, and we always trying to peek in, we're always trying to get a window into it, we're always trying to understand what is a digital experience here. But we have limited tools, limited understanding, limited capacity for getting the digital landscape. And then you have the search engines, let's just, for shorthand, use Google. Google, on the other hand, is attempting to get an understanding of the real world, but their capacity for doing so is limited. They get their understanding of the real world through databases and strings and metadata and articles and websites, things that we post, queries that we use on Google. And so you have this ecosystem exactly you described, this flow of information back and forth. I mean, you're directly approaching Google's core mission, to index the world's information and make it easily accessible. That's the very core of this. And how do they do that, and how does that work? I think just to go right back to what you said at the beginning, you're absolutely right. There isn't a hard and fast input and output for search engine optimization. And I think that speaks to exactly the point that you made is, PPC, social media marketing, while you might need a development team or an analytics team to get involved, who does the work and what the work is much more clearly defined. That's just not true for SEO. it was a great example recently. One of my clients a couple of years ago was the Wirecutter, and I did a little bit of work for them. And fast forward, I was just on a call with a potential client last week, and they referenced the Wirecutter as an incredible example of having quote-unquote cracked SEO, right? Because they rank for pretty much whatever they want to. And I said, listen, they didn't have an SEO team. When I worked with them, they had almost zero understanding of SEO, which is not in any way to be derogative about it, but they didn't have an SEO function. They had a business, and the business worked, and the business was optimized for producing content which was incredibly targeted and high quality for their audience, which happens to be the key to SEO. But to your point, they didn't have an SEO team or an SEO function. There wasn't a single SEO person you could point to and say, well, that person made them who they are.
Yeah.
The people that made them who they are the journalists and the writers and the researchers that put hundreds of hours into their content. And I think that's your point, is it's very difficult to pin down the inputs and outputs and the teams that actually work on quote-unquote SEO.
And the way I've been talking to clients and potential clients about SEO is, just to make it simple for them, is I say, look, SEO is a tool. Tell me your business goals and your marketing goals, and let's apply SEO to that and align it with what your goals are. So if your goals are top of funnel awareness traffic, great. Let's do content. If your goals are converting traffic, well, now we need another strategy.
Right.
And I think that's where a lot of the input that comes to me for client leads is people that already think they know what particular activity of SEO they want, but it's not even aligned with anything remotely close to what goal they want.
Totally.
And I think that's a problem as well. So somebody the other day came and, they wanted, I still get this sometimes, they wanted, #1 ranking for a certain keyword. And I just talk them backwards,
Right.
like, well, what do you think that keyword's going to do? And like, how many searches does it have? And does it send revenue? And, when you finally unravel that and get them back to the beginning, they realize like, oh, that's not really what I want. It's what I thought I wanted.
It's a part of the overall puzzle.
Yeah, and interesting though, I'm actually seeing the flip positive side of a #1 ranking. It's just, you have to put the value of that in its place, because
Right.
there is a value of it. And if the value is simply that the CEO or competitors or potential customers seeing that reinforcement, that gives them a certain brand impression or a certain feeling of feeling good, then
Right.
great. But you have to understand that that's what purpose it's fulfilling.
Right,
It's
right.
not fulfilling a revenue funnel purpose.
Totally. Yeah. Okay. So we dived into a theoretical hole for a moment, which was deeply fascinating, and I really want you to write that search ecosystem optimization article. But I want to get back on track to your history. So I think we skipped a few steps. We're still waiting for evolving SEO to emerge.
Yes.
Where does this come from? Talk us through the genesis of you starting an SEO agency.
Yes, I have a nice concise story of where the word evolving came from. I was trying to come up with a name for my music lesson business, and I still have the sheet of paper. I was brainstorming names. I don't have it with me, but I was brainstorming names of a music business, and I was trying to get to a word of like, what am I about? Like, and therefore, what's my business about? And I finally hit on well, I'm not about one thing because I'm always changing. And so the word evolving came out, because I go through phases, I try to grow, I try to develop. And I think a lot of people do as well. And so that word worked really well for an SEO business, I thought.
Right.
And the domain was available for $9.99. So, it's a little bit of serendipity there. But
Even better.
Yeah.
So, and do you remember the year or the date that you registered the domain name?
December 2010. Yeah,
okay.
and I also, that same month, I went out and got an LLC as well for the
Great.
business. So that was like the official birth of Evolving SEO.
Yep. And at that time, it's just you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so give us a fast-forwarded history of evolving SEO. What's the growth been since 2010?
Yeah, so it was funny, a few months ago I tweeted a screenshot of our 2010 income from Harvest. It was like $400. But the growth's been good.
But that's only for December.
Yeah, only for December. Yeah, I think the next year, might have been 10,000 or something, because I was still mostly teaching music.
Right.
But the growth's been good. I mean, so as far as people size, now we're 3 people, myself, my wife, and Anthony Penzabene, formerly known as Content Muse on Twitter.
Okay.
Some people
What's your wife's name?
Sarah.
Great.
Yeah,
Okay.
some people might remember Anthony. So we're 3 people. I've got a contractor that's amazing at Facebook ads. I think I told you about him.
Yep.
and once in a while another contractor or two for other stuff, for content, whatnot. But in terms of I guess financial growth, things definitely grew from 2010 to 2015. Growth was great. And then, and I think some of this is due to just the changing nature of SEO and some things that I'm trying to realign my business with and how I'm going out there and getting clients. Growth didn't decline in 2016, but it's been at like a, what do they call that? Plateau, thank you. And so, yeah.
Interesting. Okay, and before we I want to get into the plateau and some of the changes there, but before we do, what was the experience like hiring that first employee, and what was the experience like working with your wife?
Yeah, so I mean, I could do a whole article about working with your spouse. I think
me too.
Yeah, you too. For her and I, it's pretty straightforward actually. We work very well together.
Right.
And part of that is separation of physical space. So I have an office in Worcester, Massachusetts. I'm the only one that goes into that office and works. She works at the home office. And so working-wise, we do have a couple meetings a week where we sit down, discuss finances, discuss clients and things like that. But for the most part, it's straightforward, and part of it is because we're yin and yang, right? She's like super detail, like great at reporting, great at like doing things. I kind of spell out the process and she kind of just nails it perfect every single time.
Right.
Whereas I'm, kind of my head's up in the clouds half the time doing like creative stuff. So in that respect, we work very well together.
Right.
In terms of the experience of hiring an employee, I have to give Sarah 99% of the credit there. She set up all the paperwork, the insurance, the payroll, like she took care of like everything in terms of that stuff. On my end, once we got Anthony and brought him on, this was my first employee in this scenario. So like, I remember like the first day he came into the office, we did all the paperwork, my wife left, shut the door, and we just sat there like, okay, now what do I didn't know what to do. Like I literally...
Did you hire Anthony because you had so much work, or was it kind of preemptive of anticipating getting the work?
A little bit of both. I mean, I had worked with Sujan Patel for a long time as a mentor. He mentored me for a while. From day one, when he talked to me, he said, "You need to get an employee."
Right.
Because I wanted to be spending more of my time kind of getting new clients and like blogging and like all this stuff, podcasting, and obviously my time was not able to be spent in that realm. So I'd say 50%. We brought him in to kind of replace things I was doing, and 50% to do new things that I was not doing. Right. He's much stronger in the content creation area, the PR types of things. So that he kind of added a new element and new services we were able to offer as well.
Great. And so talk to me about the podcast a little bit. Presumably, you put it kind of, it's not the Evolving SEO podcast, as I made a mistake at the beginning of the show, but it is, designed to talk about SEO. It is designed presumably to drive business for Evolving SEO, at least in some kind of roundabout fashion. How's that worked? How's it going? Do you have a sense that this is a thing that will drive growth for the business, or is it somewhat of a passion project, or some combination of the two? It's
everything. It's like everything you just mentioned. So in terms of driving new clients, it hasn't. A few leads have come in from doing, especially when I did the interview with Rand right away, like his amplification and what we talked about on that show kind of put my expertise for. I'm sure a show like this might actually do more to bring in leads, but like most of the shows, I'm putting other people on on a pedestal, like you said. So it's more about showcasing them. And what I really think interesting, the podcast has done these things that I didn't expect. Like now when I try to get a mention in like a newspaper article, I can say podcaster. And that carries a little bit of the stigma of like an author or like somebody that does something more than just tweets or blogs. So it gives you this badge of credibility, I feel like, that reporters kind of can grab onto a little bit. It gives you like that credibility. And I think the other interesting thing is just being able to network with so many people that I normally wouldn't even have reached out to talk to. Like Jennifer Slegg from the SEM Post, or like Dave from Drift. Like all these people, like, so I've now done 31 episodes. And so I've met on Skype so many people I wouldn't have. And it gives you that excuse to break the ice and reach out to people as well. So Yeah, it's really done. I mean, and another goal of the show is to grow it big enough so it can possibly be its own revenue source at some point through advertising or through, some sort of, some sort of revenue channel. Like I went to the Podcast Movement Conference in Chicago, and so I'm very serious about it. And like we were chatting before you come in, my background in audio. That like the podcasting is this perfect Venn diagram of 7 circles where all of these things overlap, and it's something that just feels very comfortable and the right medium and the right channel.
Right. Well, I think you talk about being a podcaster gives you some cachet above just being someone who tweets, and I think that if there's one thing I've heard through the entirety of your career, it's that you're not afraid to roll up your sleeves and actually do the work or do the things, launch things, put content out in the world, put a podcast out in the world, create a business, get clients, which I think is why you've been successful. I mean, that's the root essence, I think, of why you've done the things that you've done and been able to do the things you've done, because you don't just talk about trying to do them or get frustrated that they're not happening. You just go and make them happen. And I think that, there's parallels to my own career in a sense of you don't know what's going to happen from starting a podcast. You don't know exactly where the return is going to come from, but you have faith that somewhere along the line, it'll all come back around. For example, maybe you'll land a podcasting client who wants to grow their podcast, and you will have the perfect combination of digital marketing, podcast experience, audio experience. You'll have all of those skills right there, and maybe that'll be the lead that comes through, and you'll only need one to justify the entire project. I think that's always an interesting thing. But
the other piece of advice I want to give to the listeners is I've been noticing you can create a new, not industry, but a new niche for yourself by overlapping things that aren't normally overlapped. So take SEO and podcasting and overlap them.
Right.
Now, I know a lot of other people have talked about SEO and podcasting, but I'm super I've gone super deep into SEO. Now I'm going as deep as I can into podcasting. So when you overlap those, for the listeners out there, think about you can probably take SEO and almost anything and overlap it, and create a new niche, a new vertical.
Totally.
And that's a piece of advice I think people should think about when they're trying to make themselves stand out.
Yep. I mean, that's almost branding 101, right? Is the differentiation. You have to look at the market and understand what currently exists, what's out there, and what would be interesting to enough people but doesn't yet exist. And that's the secret sauce to so much of marketing, actually, in essence. Okay, so we could talk about podcasting for another hour, but I want to come back to your business for a second. Obviously, without getting too detailed into the kind of financials and so on, you talked about 2016 having some kind of plateau for you. What do you think is behind that, and more importantly, what are you going to do to try and escape that? And by the way, you mentioned that you had amazing growth in 2010, 2015. You might not need more growth, right? I mean, you might be at a sustainable point. You can feel free to share that or not, but growth is not the be-all and end-all. I'm a big fan of 37 Signals and the whole methodology there of you don't build a business for growth's sake. You build a business for other reasons, and assuming you don't have VC money, which I'm guessing you don't, you don't need to grow, right? Growth is only a byproduct of other things. Sometimes it's necessary to achieve profitability or to achieve sustainability or whatever it might be. But talk to me a little bit about where you think that plateau's come from and what's next.
Yeah, I think a lot of it, as you know, in business really relates back to personal growth and where you are in your, personal life, emotionally, mentally, and all those things. And, I could list these things like SEO is changing, which it is, or one source of probably 50% of my business in the 2 years that Sujin was mentoring me was from Sujin.
Right.
And so that was part of it. Certain partnerships kind of change courses a little bit as well. So you take the common 80-20 thing, right? And you get 80% of your business from 20% of the sources. Those 20% of the sources kind of changed, and they kind of change all at once. So it was this, sort of timing thing, stuff you can't really plan upon. But the other part of it that I will say is that I do feel a lot of personal growth has happened for me in the last few years. I would like to think that it's always happening, I would hope. But, I'm going to tell you two, one silly thing and one thing for anybody else out there that maybe this will help people. I'll do the one helpful thing first. So if anybody out there struggles with occasionally feeling depressed, right? Sad, no ambition, you don't want to get up and do something. I've certainly gone through phases of that, and maybe we all have. And I think a lot of people want to boil it down to like something mentally wrong with you or emotionally. But like 90% of it for me was vitamin D.
Interesting.
Yeah. And
Wait, you mean actual vitamin D, or you just mean sunshine?
Yeah.
You mean like getting outside?
Getting a source of it from somewhere.
Okay.
So essentially, I went through a little bit of a rough period in April, May or so, and that can tend to happen for people that live in the north, right? You're not outside, you're not getting the sunlight. I would always go to Florida and feel great when I came home. And hey everyone, Dan here. Just with a quick disclaimer, I am of course not a doctor, so I'm going to link to a episode of the James Altucher Show with Dr. Sanjeev Chopra. He talks very extensively about vitamin D, something I discuss here. So definitely listen to that, and of course consult with your doctor about anything medically related, just to get that out of the way. And I'm also going to link to a thread of the Ask Me Anything I did on inbound.org in 2015, where I talked in a good amount of detail about the health journey that I went through, and I continue to improve. My health is great and everything. So for all two people curious about that, you can check out that thread on inbound.org. All right, let's get back to the reverse interview like a whole with Tom. detox program. Like my health is in much better shape now.
Great.
But through the course of that, I went and got, and I recommend everyone go and get a vitamin D level check, like a blood test. Mine was like right on the cusp of like the lowest it should be.
Wow.
And so this particular doctor prescribed this like it's not a pill, it's like a liquid almost, and it's like 4,000 units or whatever the measurement is.
Right.
And I basically realized I had stopped taking it through those few months.
Right.
And felt awful.
Yep.
That and just the coming through the end of the winter. And so I think for anybody out there that might be feeling bad emotionally, and I know things happen to people, like there's deaths or there's bad experiences and whatnot. And I'm not discounting that or like negating it, but a lot of it's physical.
Yep.
A lot of it ties back to your physical health, kind of like the balance in your system. And for me, that's something that since I've been consistent about that, I've been feeling great.
That's great.
Yeah.
And just to jump in, I think the personal well-being and the way that you live your life and the mindset you have about your life is, like you said, and I completely agree with you, driven a lot biologically, whether that is through something more deep-rooted like a mental health issue, or whether it's just through an imbalance or a kind of mindset change and so on. But I think it's also important that physical biological state is also driven by your support network.
Yes.
And you didn't find out about the vitamin D thing other than going to a doctor, but you could have found out that from a friend or from I think that our support networks, and importantly sharing to our support networks, being open with our trusted people makes a huge difference in your well-being, in the access to knowledge, access to information, quote unquote wisdom. This idea that old wives' tales exist for a reason is because they're the kind of knowledge that are very difficult to pass on in other forms. And I think that, not that by the way that I'm calling vitamin D an old wives' tale, I'm just saying, drawing the analogy to getting access to the support and the advice when you need it. And if you don't talk about it, if you don't share with the right network. So I think, I've been through similar experiences myself of, ups and downs and so on in life. And I think that you're absolutely right. And it's important not to overlook the kind of conjoined aspect of your own physicality with the physicality of the people you surround yourself with. And importantly, what you share with them. And I think to at least draw some thread to the digital world is it's important not to overemphasize the reliance on social media as being close to people. It serves its purpose and it has some uses, etc. But the idea of sharing those intimate moments with the trusted few, we still don't have a good answer for that necessarily with digital, or at least not progressing that in any way. Obviously you can share intimately with anyone on any platform, but I think it's an interesting perspective, and I think it's also interesting that you talk about, when you talk about your business, the first thing that comes to mind for you is your own well-being, your own mental health, your own mental outlook on life, which I think is so true. Rand's talked a lot about his own depression. Yep. It's you really can't separate the two. You think of a business as an abstract entity, It's really not. It's just the people behind it.
Yeah, and when essentially it's a family business as well, then it's even more intertwined. I mean, when my wife and I go on vacation, we're still talking about the business and it's on our minds.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, to me, it's kind of a ludicrous idea to just separate business from your personal, like, it's not like I step out of my body and go to like you know what I mean? Like I'm what's that saying?
You don't put on like a superhero suit every morning, the evolving SEO, Lycra, and
it's got a big E on it. So now, what's that quote? Like, wherever you go, there you are. It's like a Buddhist quote. So yeah, I mean, tie that back into like, you know, I'm responsible for getting more business for evolving SEO, but if I'm not of the mental emotional state to go and do the 8, 10, sometimes 12, 14 hours that I might put in a day, I mean, that's just, it's cause and effect at that point. It's just like not putting in the inputs to get the outputs. Now, the second thing that's a little more humorous to bring things up a little is, and this, I'm going to just disclaim that I know that I'm not normal. I know that I'm a little peculiar in certain ways. Starting in June, it gets really hot in Massachusetts, right? And I think it's interesting, this weather thing seems to be coming up. Like living in New England, things are always changing. You find it tough to keep a consistent routine, but things get really hot in June, and what do people do when it gets hot? You start wearing shorts, right? You start like, you know, loosening up a little and being a little bit more relaxed. So then I went to San Francisco to work for a client in June. I was still a little bit in that depressed state, but getting out of it. And I was so productive when I went to San Francisco. And I came home, and I thought it was because I was working in-house at a company. I was like, oh, maybe like the energy of the people and like, you know, just being in the same room with everyone. And I got home, and I even talked to my wife about it. And I went another 2-3 weeks just feeling super unproductive, like super like not confident. And like I didn't know why or what was wrong, and it hit me one day. It was because I was wearing pants. It's like totally a weird thing, but like I think to bring it down from the weirdness, like being in a consulting job, confidence is a huge thing. Like how you feel about yourself is a direct relationship to the work that you do, 100%. To talking to clients, to, you know, just feeling like great, like getting up and wanting to do what you can do. And for me, I realized that I did not feel professional or competent just casually wearing shorts and like a t-shirt. Like I felt like I was on vacation. I felt like a kid. And as you're sitting here wearing shorts next to me.
Well, it's interesting. I think everyone needs their own suit of armor, whatever that looks like. For me, actually, you know, part of the value that I ascribe to the path that I've chosen is being able to opt out of wearing a suit, of wearing pants, and I love wearing shorts, and it's kind of part of my suit of armor at this point. And everyone is different. You know, you need that persona that makes you feel good and makes you feel confident and makes you feel like, okay, I got this, I can do this.
Yeah, it's weird. I never appreciated fashion or clothes, right? But it makes you, when you realize that you have a psychological response to putting on certain clothes, that you can actually use that to make you feel how you want to feel in a particular moment.
So I can't remember if we talked about this on the last podcast, but there's a huge component here to the last SEO presentation I gave 2012 when I wore those blue pants on stage when I went head-to-head with Rand. And I think that it's interesting that was the suit of armor I chose, and that was probably the most intentional wardrobe I've ever picked.
Yeah, and why did you choose that?
I picked it for two reasons. One is I wanted to make sure that I was wearing my own suit of armor. Shorts wasn't going to cut it, so I had to do something a little bit more creative, something that wasn't business, right? Something
when you say your own, do you mean like that really represented you and your personality?
For me, like I had to feel confident on stage, right? Like I had to wear something that made me feel like I could do what I had to do, and to do it well and to be myself. But the flip side was I knew Rand was going to wear a three-piece suit. I knew it. Rand looks great in a three-piece suit. I say that as somebody who has a daughter and has a partner, but he looks really great in a three-piece suit. Sometimes I find myself sweating when I look at him in a three-piece suit. I'm sure Geraldine will be fine with that. and I knew that I wasn't going to out-suit him. Even if I went out and bought a 3-piece suit, I was not going to look as good as Rand did in a suit. And so I thought, there's no way I can compete. I'm not going to go out there and try and wear an inferior version of what
tuxedo.
Rand... Right, like I'm not going to go and try and look like Rand. I want to go and try and look like Tom. And so I did that in a very intentional manner.
And it worked. You won, right?
I did win. I mean, I've got no idea. It's impossible to say after the fact how much the outfit mattered.
The head-to-head, this is the one where you had no slides, right?
Correct.
I think, maybe speaking for myself, I think that aspect of it really won people over. That you just went up there, no slides, and just talk directly to the people. I think that aspect really spoke to everyone.
I mean, it was pretty raw, I think, which for better or for worse, not everyone was happy with the talk. The one interesting moment while we're talking about fashion is the year after Cyrus, who was working at Moz, imitated my outfit and went on stage in blue pants, white shirt, which I thought was kind of hilarious. Unfortunately, I wasn't there for it. I wish I had been, but...
that speaks to, you made an impact, though. Like, by
people remembered it.
Yes.
I mean, that's it's difficult to argue with that. Obviously the content of the speech is another thing, but people remember the blue pants. I still get comments about it to this day, which is kind of amusing. In fact, I wore my blue pants out to a meeting the other day, and somebody made a comment about it. So it's still out there in the consciousness in the industry, which is kind of amusing. Maybe I should have worn it today, surrounded by Affiliate Summit folks. I would have got a few more people recognizing me. But enough about me. We've been talking for a while, and I want to make sure I touch on this last point, which is, you mentioned that business was plateauing a little bit, but you've got a bunch of things that you're excited about changing, and you've got a new mindset and so on. You're wearing pants, which is great. Talk to me about your ideal client. Like, what if a client could come along tomorrow and they said, "Hey Dan, we heard about you. We heard about involving SEO. We want to engage." What would the perfect makeup be? I'm not necessarily looking for like a specific company, although if you have one in mind, but more so like, what would be the type of project and the type of client that would come to you that would you be like, this is where I want to take my business?
Yeah, I'll divide it into two ways. One, our particular skill set and services. What we can do really well is two things, but more than two things, but I'll highlight these two.
Sure.
One is I've got technical audits pretty solid.
Yep.
So we've got a really good process down, over 200-point checklist. We do it, a lot of it manually. So if anybody out there has a site that is in need of some technical attention, and like we said at the beginning, I'm pretty confident talking to developers, communicating to them in a way that they understand, giving things in a very I know they love things in a checklist fashion, one step at a time, very clear. But the second thing is really ideas and strategy for content, and also for how SEO can help your business. And one thing we just keep hitting out of the park is, and this is what I'm talking about here today at ASE, is finding those gaps in content opportunity that really match your site specifically. Because there's a lot of small sites that want to shoot high and go for this 4,000 searches a month keyword, and they can't do it. But, and like I'm going to talk about today, I found a keyword that has, quote, 10 searches a month, but is now bringing in hundreds of visits of organic traffic month over month over month over month to that content because of all the long tail keywords we didn't even think of. So I'd say kind of a keyword research / content strategy / even broader SEO strategy for for businesses that have content creators. You have like a solid content team, but you just need direction. You need to know what can I get out of a search engine for traffic. That's who we can really help as well. And then if there's all the other nitty-gritty things as well. But I'd say those areas work well. And the only type of company we don't really work with is like, quote, local SEO. So if anybody's geographically targeting themselves, dentist in Boston or whatnot, I refer those out to like a really specialized local SEO.
Sure. And just because Dan's too modest to say this himself, Dan's actually referred me business. I've actually spoken to some of Dan's clients where we're overlapping on some projects, and the positive feedback I've got about Dan and evolving SEO has really blown me away, to the point where I'd say there's only really 3 people I pass on SEO leads to, one of which is Dan.
Thanks, man.
Of course. If you need somebody to do some great work for you, really reach out. If you're listening to the podcast, you're in the industry, right? So you're listening to this for a reason. You're curious. You're interested about how this industry works. Even if maybe it's not to hire Dan, but just to pick his brains, just to say, hey, I want a second opinion on this. And I think what you said really strikes a chord. It's actually very similar to some of the work that I've been doing. Is companies that have content teams, they quote unquote know what they're doing, right? They know they should be doing content marketing, they know they should be doing SEO, and they've had some successes, but they're struggling to figure out how to take it to the next level. Where does that next area of opportunity come from? And sometimes that's on the creative end. Sometimes it's like, hey, there's a big white space over here we could really attack if we invest some time and energy and money. And sometimes it's just more rigor. Sometimes it's more like, well, hey, you're spewing content out, but there's a much more disciplined and analytical and measured approach to doing this. Sounds like you've got both of those.
Yes. So, I mean, we measure things a lot.
Right.
So there's that part of it too. And it's about going back to the content you've already published and upgrading it, killing the stuff that doesn't work. So
right.
yeah, there's
a whole cycle.
Yep.
Yeah. Great. We haven't even talked about your presentation. You're giving a presentation, in a couple of hours?
Yeah.
Hopefully I haven't used up all of your voice.
I have plenty of voice and energy. Like I said when we started, I like to talk. So
yeah.
That's
so tell me, what are you presenting on?
It's called Advanced Keyword Research for Content Opportunities. So exactly what we're talking about at the end there. I'm going to go through several tactics people can use, using creative ways to use tools that they probably know about or may not know about, and just kind of that, and establishing the why, like you just said, and like what the value is that they're going to get out of it, and putting it into context. So that's really what the talk is. I really want to encourage and inspire people to know that you can still get this kind of value out of quote SEO. It's just that I find a lot of people looking in the wrong places, not being specific enough. Like I said, going for keywords that have too much volume, not realizing that there's a lot of opportunity in the long tail.
Right. Great.
So we need to talk about...
Wait a second. I want to talk about your presentation skills for 1 second.
Yeah.
You spend a lot of time on stage, right? You've done a lot of music gigs.
Yes.
How does that inform your presenting style? Do you have a tempo that you find comes from music? Do you have a stance or a kind of an energy on stage that you find comes from music? Or has that developed from doing conferences? I mean, talk to me about how it feels on stage to somebody who is a musician.
It's funny, it's totally different. I thought it was going to be the same, completely different. And I think that there's a lot more self-consciousness for me anyways, speaking versus music.
Right.
I mean, I've been doing music since I was 4.
Right, you haven't been doing SEO presentations since you were 4.
And I would consider myself, compared to yourself or Rand or Will Reynolds, like moderately, new still at presenting. I've done a good handful. There's a lot of areas that I want to improve upon. That the podcast, that's another benefit of the podcast, is just being a better speaker, a better talker. That's really helped with that. But yeah, in terms of being on stage, I mean, this could be a whole other podcast. I'm fascinated by body language, stage presence, like you said, tempo, the tone of your voice, like all that stuff. And so
just a quick interjection there. We talked about that presentation I gave at MozCon with the Blue Pants. Because I was going head-to-head with Rand and I wanted to give a good presentation, I sat down with Phil Nottingham, who used to work at Distilled. He's now working with Wistia, but he is a trained stage fighter and actor. And he gave me some really great body language advice about showing the hands, about breathing, about timing, about looking at the audience, that really helped me in that presentation. Even if it was just inwardly focused, even if the audience didn't notice, I think they did at times, but it really helped me. But so to your point, that energy and the way that you direct the crowd's energy is something very unique, and I think also different to music. Although I've never been a musician on stage, I feel like in some senses there is much, like with music, the audience knows the script. With a conference presentation, often, although you have the slides, which is kind of the scaffolding of the talk, there isn't really, when you see a speaker for the first time, you don't really know how they're going to do their talk. Are they going to go personal? Are they going to go business? Are they going to go analytical? Are they going to, whiz through it really fast? Are they going to be really slow? Are they going to be boring? Are they going to be interesting? Like, you just don't know, right? And I think it's much more like seeing comedy than seeing music, where you go in with a kind of blank slate and you have to just build the whole thing from scratch in the room.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I know, so I love comedians. I kind of like study them from afar as well. And the number one comedian rule is that you need to establish that rapport very quickly when you walk out.
Right.
And I hope to think that I do that by accident, because I'm certainly not consciously trying to do that when I step out there. Although today I do have some things that I might do to do that.
So I was going to ask you, so you mentioned that you're kind of, the very name Evolving SEO comes from the idea of constantly improving, constantly questioning and being curious about how to get better at things and learn new things. What's one thing that you're trying that's new in today's presentation?
Yeah, so I'm consciously, like I was just saying, going to go out to try to establish that rapport with people. And
is that a particular line you have, or a particular phrase, or a slide, or what is? You don't have to give the whole game away, but
I don't think anyone here cares.
That's true.
I have a few options of questions that I want to. So I think starting with a question is a great way if you don't know what else to do.
Yep.
So I'm either going to start with just casually asking people how they got to the conference. Did you fly? Did you drive? Did you take the train? Because I might start by saying, "Oh, I drove down this morning from Massachusetts," just to kind of break the ice a little. If I get the sense that people aren't really interested in like the chit chat, then I'm going to go into a question with, "Well, who here owns a business, or who here, does marketing for a company, or who here is running a website on the side?" Like those types of questions to try to get a feel for who's sitting in the room.
Right.
And I think the one place that music and speaking do overlap is more in a mindset, and that is the mindset of that it's about more than just me. It's about the people in the room and helping them and thinking about really what they need. And so it's not about me judging myself. Do they think I'm good? Do they think I suck or whatever? It's about thinking about what their needs are and trying to fulfill that. And that was one kind of brain hack that I found worked very well in music as well.
Right. Yeah, right. Getting in the minds of the audience rather than staying in your own mind.
Yeah, it's the whole, get rid of the ego thing, and it's bigger than you, that type of thing.
Yeah. Huh. Well, by the time people listen to this podcast, we'll know the answer to how that presentation went and how the opener went in particular. I think we need to follow up or close the loop on that for the recorded podcast. I think it's interesting. One thing that I found works very well is actually bringing a bit more of the podcasting narrative approach into presentations. So, it's good to establish a rapport with the audience, like you said, but I think it's also good to give the audience a sense of who Dan Short is, right? To have that kind of sense. Like you mentioned, like I drove down this morning. That's a great anchor. One of the questions I asked earlier in the podcast was, paint the picture for me. I said, what does it look like for Dan in 2010? And you gave me this answer about Dreamweaver, and we talked about kind of physically being at the laptop, talking, writing code. I think that is a piece that is often missing from presentations, is people forget that they'll say who they are at a very surface level. They'll be like, here's where I work, here's my Twitter handle, but they don't help people understand who the person is. And so I think that's kind of a really good, I've always found that works very well as kind of a good anchor to give people a little glimpse into your life. So the idea of like you driving down, or even sat here recording a podcast on the couch, that helps people be like, oh, people perk up at that, because people care about people. Like obviously people are there to learn about business, but the reptilian brain, the base of the brain cares about people. They care about, oh, who is Dan? Is he better or worse than me? Is he like me? Is he not like me? Is he interesting? Is he not interesting? What did he have for breakfast? Like people actually want to know that. You don't want to tell them because it's too banal, but the reptilian part of the brain is constantly comparing yourself to other people. And I've always found that kind of hack of being like, let me tell you exactly where I was at 9:30 this morning. I was doing X, Y, and Z, and then I stubbed my toe, and it still hurts. But anyway, onto the present. Like that has always been a great icebreaker for me.
And I love that. So I think I might roll with that. Where did you come from? I drove down this morning. I might go with that. I appreciate the tip. That is the other part that I can relate speaking to music, which I'm very free form. So the styles of music I love are very improvised bass.
Right.
So I'm very comfortable just getting up on stage and just going.
Yep.
And half the time I don't even know what's coming out my mouth, but it's just rolling and it's happening. And I'll step off and I'll be like, did that suck? Like, I don't know if that was what happened while I was up there.
Right.
Actually, I did an 1.5-hour presentation in Newport 3-4 months ago, where that's what I did. I had no slides. I just went up, like kind of what you did at MozCon. And but I found once, and part of it too is you need to talk about something that you're confident in, that that you know about, right? So I'm not going to try to talk about email marketing.
Right. You're not bullshitting for an hour and a half.
Right.
You're just talking about something you know about.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, and another mind hack is that it's no different than just being on the phone with a client. Like maybe I'm putting a little bit more performance into it, but I say these things all of the time, so it should come out fairly naturally on stage as well.
Right. I just had a amazing idea for a presentation talk that would be hard to pull off, but hacking conferences, they do this thing where they get in a booth and they do the social engineering on the stage. Like they pick up the phone, they call Bank of America, and they get somebody's credit card info or whatever on and full broadcast to the audience. How great would it be to do a client call on stage?
Oh yeah.
Either walking through a proposal you gave them or walking through a recommendation, set of recommendations. Like I think people would get so much value from the genuine nature of that back and forth and understanding like, oh, well, what does happen? Like it's okay to say that the client should do X, but what happens when the client says Y? Because that is the situation that every single person sat in that audience is in. On one side or the other. Either they're the client or they're the consultant or the agency.
Right.
And everyone has been in that situation. Everyone wants to know, how did they handle it?
And then we can spin it off into like a Seinfeld discourse of like just talking about nothing.
Right.
I like Seinfeld. But no,
me too.
Actually Pat Flynn had a great tip for me. I met Pat Flynn from Smart Passive Income at Podcast Movement. And I said, Pat, do you have any thoughts about, like, are there any things in podcasting marketers are not doing? And he said, do a consulting call as a podcast. I guess he had done a few of those. And so you're just taking that and taking it a step further live on stage. I love that.
Right.
I mean, I should definitely do one or both of those. For sure.
No, I think it would be great. And I'm thinking through as well, especially you could do it for the consulting aspect, but you could also do it for the sales aspect. I think doing a sales call on stage as a live event, you'd obviously have to get people buying a commission and so on. They don't do that at the hacking conferences. But that would be fascinating. Anyway, we're kind of off topic.
Yeah, I want to make sure we talk quickly about your project.
Sure.
And then we got to go get lunch.
Yeah, I'm getting hungry. Let's do that. So by the time the podcast airs, there'll be a blog post out. How's that for committing myself? I'm writing a blog post right now. So when Dan and I spoke last week, I said I was launching a new project, and I've decided not to launch the project, so I just want to talk about that for a sec. So, I've been doing independent consulting for almost 2 years now, and there was this kind of abstract thought I had, but I had to grow up a little bit, that I had to, doing it under my own name without a business entity, there's no evolving SEO wrapper for me. And I thought, it was always on my to-do list. It's like, I should get around to doing that. I should get around to forming a business and creating this wrapper and trying to make something bigger than just myself. So I did it. About 2 weeks ago, I sat down and I said, you know what? I'm going to create a brand. I'm going to create a website. I'm going to create a name, and I put a website live. And I did it. I created a brand, this identity, this business called Yes and it's kind of this. I thought kind of clever riff on the kind of improvisational nature of consulting and the kind of positive attitude that I have, and I thought it represented me quite well. I thought it was nice and I went all the way down the route. I actually registered the LLC, did all the paperwork, and was all set to launch. And then I had a conversation with my good friend Ron Garrett, who I used to work with at Distilled, and I said, Ron, what do you think? I'm about to launch this thing. And he said, don't do it. And it kind of stopped me in my tracks, because it's not often that you'll reach out to somebody for feedback and they'll say, this is wrong. People will be like, well, you could do this, you could do that, you could tweak X, you could tweak Y. And he was like, you shouldn't do this. And I said, okay, interesting, why? You tell me why. And he said, because as an independent consultant, people are buying you. They're not buying brand, and especially with the kind of cutesy brand that it's kind of playful, it's kind of awkward to remember, it's awkward to say, it's awkward to type, of all the things. The idea was that Ron basically said, I'm confusing the market, and that I will have to build an entirely new persona and a new brand around this thing. The interesting conversation I had with Ron, and actually I wish I recorded that conversation because it was fascinating, was there are a lot of reasons why I wanted to create a brand. One of which was I didn't want to be the independent marketing consultant that you kind of know the stereotype of, the person that has the photo of themselves skydiving and driving a Ferrari on their about page. I didn't want that for myself. I didn't want to put a massive photo of me on stage on the front page of the website. And so I thought by creating a distinct business brand, I would kind of sidestep that. Actually, that's not true. The reality is that I think I was just afraid of using my own name, afraid of coming across as amateur, just being myself, and that a lot of that fear drove me to do something different, which actually was not the right thing to do. All of that is a very long-winded way of saying I've decided that I'm not going to create a brand for my consulting. I'm going to use my own name. Doesn't mean I can't grow up. So I relaunched the website, and I'm going to have coming soon, more kind of testimonials and case studies and a much clearer definition and explanation of the work that I do. So it can still serve the purpose of being a home for my consulting and driving business, but it's going to happen under my own name, and I'm kind of excited about that. It was interesting that I think I had to go do all that work to come full circle and find the root of where I was coming from and what I was trying to do, and obviously a huge shout out to Ron for being a very close friend, but also having the insight and the clarity to be able to kind of change my thinking. So who knows what will happen in the future. Maybe a couple of years down the line I will create a brand, and certainly I think if I'm going to hire people and kind of create an agency or a small team environment, then a brand probably makes a little bit more sense. But for now, I'm really focused on kind of staying independent, of creating that lifestyle for myself, but also, personally delivering all of the work that I sell. There's something very tangible about the idea of me doing the sales and the work and the invoicing, and that whole cycle makes me very, very close to the work that I do. Also makes me very close to the clients that I get. It gives me a very kind of every client is almost a partner rather than just a kind of another client on a list of clients. But anyway, that's enough talking about myself. I already had a podcast show on here. I want the show to be about you, so look out for the blog post. We can link to it in the show notes.
Yeah, no, it's good to get updated, and yeah, we'll drop that in the show notes. And I'm going to chat more to you about your business, but when we go get lunch.
Sounds great. Thank you for being a guest on your own show today, Dan. This is a pleasure. I really love talking about hearing your both kind of philosophical and kind of headspace. The story of that journey was super fascinating. Some bits that I knew, some bits that I didn't. But it's great to hear the update. It's really also great to hear you speak confidently about the kind of work that you get excited about doing, which is really inspiring. I won't be around for the talk later this afternoon because I'm a freeloader and I don't have a ticket for Affiliate Summit. But I'm sure it'll go well. We'll update folks on that, and more soon. Let's go get some lunch.
Cool, appreciate it, Tom.
Pleasure.
Thank you. We just shook hands, but no one can see that. I don't know why I did that.